Hello YouTube, welcome to my Daughter of Oshabi ascendancy overview, plus analysis, plus a little bit of conjecture about how you could potentially build this. Without any further ado, let's get into the ascendancy, starting from things I find most interesting to things I find a little bit less interesting. For starters, we have the two shrine nodes. This node is going to create lesser shrine when you kill an enemy, which is an effect normally found on the goal. And this is going to gain a random shrine buff every 10 seconds. The base duration of this shrine buff will be 10 seconds. This is the same wording of, this seems to be the same wording as it exists on a staff. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Currently, there is a staff enchantment for... Where are you? Here we go. Staff with gain a random shrine buff every 10 seconds when equipped, and it lasts for 10 seconds. So, unless you scale shrine duration, you won't have multiple at the same time. But you could scale shrine duration, and we'll talk about that later. Then we have our lesser shrines, which we normally get from the goal. And these lesser shrine buffs are as follows. We have increased action speed, which is super strong. Projectile speed, which is okay. Damage, armor evasion rating, energy shield, area of effect, maximum life, etc. So we're going to be triggering these buffs periodically, and we're going to try to stack up as many as possible. And the idea is to become a beast. Pretty much every build that runs both of those nodes is going to want to run the goal for this line. 50% increased effect of shrine effects on you, or increased duration of shrine effects on you, and 75% increased effect of shrine buffs on you. This would be an amazing league starter under normal circumstances. However, there are currently 3 ascendancies that have good synergies with the goal. It's this, the Scavenger, and I believe there's one on the, what's the other one? Is it the Polytheist that also has some shrine synergy nodes? Regardless, my point being, it's possible this helmet could be expensive, so think about that if you're planning on league starting this strategy. You can also get shrine duration and shrine effect on the Atlas tree, which means there should be relics this event that will allow you to put those into your map device, and you should be able to get more shrine duration that way. And what that will cause, let's say you're running the goal and you're running this build, you'll get 1 lesser shrine from the goal, 1 lesser shrine from the ascendancy. You'll get almost double duration from the goal. So what that will do is that should double the amount of uptime you get. So that means you should be able to have between 2 and 4 lesser shrines on yourself at all times. And then you should be able to have 2 random regular shrine buffs on yourself at a time. So this build already is going to be scaling a lot of free damage out of these nodes. The shrine buffs can be very strong. They can be enemies explode. They can be you are immortal, meaning you literally cannot die. Very fun stuff. It should be a very fun build to play around with, and it would fit on almost any archetype. Like the damage on shrines are pretty generic. So you should be able to scale spells or attacks. Won't really matter. Then we have Roots of the Grove. This is important because it allows all damage to inflict poison. So this can potentially, also it will give you 100% poison chance. So normally a poison-based build has to run a weapon that does physical damage and poison damage. This allows you to run an elemental damage weapon, which are much easier to craft and have higher total DPS potential generally. So you could, for example, craft a tri-elemental bow with lightning damage, fire damage, and cold damage, and then use it with Roots of the Grove, and all of your damage would poison. It's very nice. You do need to reach 5 Grasping Vines, so you need to trigger this effect, and you inflict 1 Grasping Vine per hit. This means that you would need to use this on attack that on an attack that hits quickly, so you can maximize your Vine DPS. Also, you could just throw in this node on a build that doesn't normally scale poison and just treat the poison as extra damage. I have seen builds like that work before. Probably not what I would do, but it is an option. Here we have a great evasion stacking node. Gain 2% increased attack damage per 450 evasion. This allows you to not run a Dream Feather, which would normally be required on a evasion stacking build. So potentially very powerful, but only if you are running evasion stacker. Then we have Oath of the Magi, which is an extremely powerful leveling node, plus potentially powerful for evasion stacking. You can see this first line of defenses from equipped body armor doubled if it has no socketed gems. So you could run a very big evasion chest, take the socketed gems out of it, and put your 6-link somewhere else, potentially in a 6-link weapon if you're doing an evasion stacking build. It could be very strong. Also, you see this Oath of the Magi node. It was used a lot in Affliction League on Valdo's map builds. You would run it with Trickster, and you would get a very, very big body armor and end up with something like 20,000 ES and Ghost Dance and a bunch of other mechanics, and you basically just had the HP pool to survive one-shot mechanics. Obviously, you probably won't be playing Trickster this league, but you could steal the important nodes from Trickster using a Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame, and that strategy is very good. You also have 30% increased movement speed if equipped boots have no socketed gems. This is extremely powerful while you are leveling, and many people who were Oath of the Magi in Affliction League found themselves always keeping their boot socket empty, despite the opportunity cost of that, because 30% movement speed is just very good. It can also help you with your resistances in the early game. You don't want to keep your helm slot empty of sockets in the long run, but it is here. Next, we have 2 nodes that are made exclusively for the wand archetype. We have Illuminating Wisp, which gives you +2 maximum number of Sacred Wisps and +2 number of Sacred Wisps summon. Sacred Wisps in this context are from Sacred Wisp Support, which I can just show you really quickly. Sacred Wisps. What this does is it causes you to deal... It gives you a 25% chance that when you fire a projectile, when you 25 chance to trigger when you fire a projectile with the skill it's supporting, and what it does is it will add 2 wisps normally. This time it will add 4 wisps, right? That will also fire at whatever you're shooting at. And it will trigger 50% of the time instead of 25% of the time when there's a rare or unique enemy nearby. So it is a more projectiles multiplier, essentially, and that node makes it very strong. We also have the node behind it, which is... sorry, I am looking at the wrong thing. Here we go. This node behind it, which is skills are supported by Spellslinger. Skills supported by Spellslinger have 50% increased cooldown recovery rate. This is a lot of extra damage for Spellslinger builds. One thing that they have issues with when you talk about scaling them super into the late game is that their trigger rate is capped. And then you have skills supported by Spellslinger have 50% reduced mana reservation. This is massive. This means you essentially have double the mana you used to have in a spell slinging setup. And I do think spell slinger has always been one of those things that is just hovering on the outside of the meta. It's always been usable, but there's been things that are just a little bit better. Generally, if you run a spell slinging setup, you'll want to use a skill with a very high effectiveness of added damage. Generally, that is Eye of Winter. So Eye of Winter is very popular in Spellslinger builds, and I think that's a strong option if you want to go Spellslinger this league. So, that's, as short as that is kind of the rundown of the entire ascendancy. You are either going wands, you are going poison, or maybe you're going wands and poison, or you're going evasion stacker. And either one of those archetypes have the ability to dip into the shrine nodes. I do believe you want both shrine nodes if you are going for the shrine nodes. That should be a fun build. And you will also want the goal 100%. You could also go blunderbore with the goal, but that is a lot harder to justify on most builds. So what blunderbore will do is it will give you another 75% increased effect of shrine buffs on you and give you 2 lesser shrines for free. It has a massive strength requirement though, so if you're going to run that, you will run it with a Legion jewel notable called Supreme Ostentation, which will remove all the bonuses you get from attributes and in exchange make it to where you ignore all attribute requirements. So you could equip a blunderbore on any build. I do not recommend probably going blunderbore on a shrine stacker with this ascendancy. I think the goal is doing most of the work blunderbore is doing already. So I don't really see a value in doubling up. But hey, if you want to do it, the option is there. So that concludes my overview of this ascendancy. If I was to give it a power rating on how it is compared to the other ascendancies, I think the existence of the shrine nodes alone probably put it above average. This is a very solid ascendancy, and if you can take advantage of the all damage poisons in some way, then it will potentially be a top tier ascendancy. I don't think it competes with Whisperer. I think Whisperer is, in the late game at least, the best ascendancy this league, and I already have a video out on the Whisperer, and I don't think it is necessarily as good as the Surfcaster, which is probably the fastest, if nothing else, build this league with all the sources of action speed. I might even have to redo that video because of some of the new stuff people have been talking about. But anyways, yeah, so here is the ascendancy, and let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.